Hello. So, this is episode 8.6, my favorite year of my elementary school years. So, that is continued. So, couple of incidents from the time I was around 8 is I remember this really nice New Year Eve celebration that we did, and I think out of my entire like age 8, probably that was my favorite day of that age, that year. So my dad was a very fun loving person. So because the family had literally tripled in size, I remember this New Year celebration where we went to my amama's place. We picked up my youngest ataya and youngest Mawaya, my uncle and aunt. And then we even picked up my grandmother and grandfather just before midnight in the car. Then we went to my Pinny's house, to her in-laws' house, and it was all like dark and they had already gone to sleep. They were not necessarily party animals, but we started honking, and then she came downstairs. We picked up my second uncle, and all of us, we went to Abbott's and we bought like masks for everybody, and everybody chose like a different like fun mask, like a joker or a king or a queen, and even my mama was wearing a mask, and I was so kicked about that. Then we went to St. John's Bakery, and we bought a birthday cake for my tataya, for my mom's dad. So his birthday was actually on December 30th, but we just decided to celebrate it on December 31st. And then we wished, then the midnight hour came, and then we wished everybody. We were screaming Happy New Year to everybody on the street, on the roads. It was a different time, different. It almost seems like a different era. It was a different era, but seems like a different world because not many people used to venture out at night. So, but people who did used to be celebrating. It was not like these days where everybody celebrates. Very few people celebrated. Most people stayed home. So we said happy birthday to everybody, and then not happy birthday, sorry, happy New Year. And then we said happy birthday to my tataya. We came home, and we cut the cake, and it was. I'll always remember that because I was so happy and had so much fun. Around this time, my parents decided, actually just before this incident, a few months before, they had also decided to build a second story. Ours was a single story bungalow, so they decided to build a second floor. And in India, they call it first floor, but I'm going to call it second floor so that's easy for everybody to understand. So, so they decided to build a second floor, and my dad originally hired a contractor who drew up plans. For the original plan was there would only be kind of one room, two bedrooms, and one veranda, or like open, kind of like a porch, covered porch kind of thing. That was all the intent was. Then they said, okay, why don't we do two bedrooms and a covered porch and a kitchen? And after a while, they said, why don't we just build up the whole second floor and convert the area that was over my grandma, my Bama's room, into kind of like a terrace. So originally, they had hired a contractor, and then they were not happy. He was taking too long, and he had made some mistakes also. So my dad fired him, and he himself became like the architect of it. So we started construction on our second story, and interestingly, my dad, again, always wanted to try new things, right? So typically back then, they would they would have these mud bricks. They didn't mud kiln bricks, wood fired bricks. That people would use to build their homes. These days, I think for a while, people now in India, they use those large cement blocks. But literally, ours was the first home that that started. My dad wanted to experiment on that. So we ordered a whole bunch of those cement blocks, and they sat right next to that the play set, the swing set. They actually had to move the swing set forward because they had to displace it, replace, and move it 5 feet or 4 feet forward because they were going to build a staircase going up. My mother always wanted to have pillars in the front. There would be a balcony in the front, and my dad designed the whole thing. It was just so beautiful. But coming back to the cement bricks, we didn't realize that the house, the main floor, there was no cement on it. It was basically bricks and plastered with limestone. Not even limestone, lime, that was the base. There was no cement. So the story down there was not, the single story that was already built was not strong enough to withstand the heavy cement bricks that were going to go on the second story. Then that's when I heard this new concept saying they had to build pillars everywhere, to actually hold it up. So they started building pillars everywhere to hold it up, and some of those pillars would even come all the way into the single story. So a lot of construction began. My grandfather's birthday celebration was actually after the home was all constructed, and it was upstairs. We sang happy birthday to him, and his cake was in the shape of a butterfly. I remember that very, very well. And I think he had turned 69, maybe something like that, 69. That was his birthday. So that was a lot of fun. And the other incident I remember, of course, I talked about, we had just begun construction of the second story. That was a big event. Another event that I very clearly remember is around this time, once one of my teachers, my social studies teacher in Sylvania Garden School, one day she summoned me and she started asking about, I think there was some kind of a survey and in which you had to put in your dad's income. Okay. I don't know why they would ask that, but I was repeatedly asked this in other schools also, because so I think it's some kind of a survey that schools used to do. I'm sure in this day and age you are not allowed to do something like that, but you're supposed to put in your dad's income. And I went and asked my dad how much his income was, and I put that number there. And I remember this incident so well. She saw that number and she was like taken aback. So she said, this is a lot. Are you sure this is his income? Are you sure this is not his yearly income? This is because you have to put the monthly salary here. I said, yeah, I'm sure. Then she said, clarify that with him, because this seems more like a yearly income. So I went and clarified that with him. I was pretty sure he was right, because I used to ask him often like what his income was, and I kind of knew his income. I kind of knew he was in a very good job. So I came back and said, yeah, that is his income. So she said, okay. And then a few days later, in fact, just a couple of days later, she summoned me and she asked me, what does your dad do? Is he like a manager of some sort? Does he have a team of people? I said, yeah, he's like a sales and marketing manager. In fact, he's like a regional manager of so and so company, and yeah, he has a large team. He has sales offices like, all over southern India, especially in AP. So, and so she said, and I still remember the teacher's name. Her name was Farida, right? So she said, can you do me a favor? She said, my husband has been out of a job for a while now, and it's becoming, we need some help. So could you give me your address, uh, uh, and could you let me know when you're home? When is your dad usually home? So I said, well, he comes home late. He comes home after 7:30 p.m. or something like that. Then she said, okay, could you give me your address? And I gave her my address because she was my teacher, and I was only still 8. If your teacher wants your address, she wants your address. So I told her my address. I didn't know how to tell her the directions. I gave her some general directions. That is in front of this Andhra Bank, and you see Hanuman stores, whatever. And then she said, so could you tell your dad that my husband and I would like to meet him, and it'll be nice if about my husband's job. So make sure to tell him that when you go home tonight. So basically she said that she'd come back the next day. So I went home, and also she was going to come home that night, or the next night, yeah. So I went home, and I completely forgot to tell my dad about it. I forgot about this incident, actually. So the next day when I went to school, my teacher asked me, did you tell your dad? So I didn't really know what they were going to do with this information, and I thought, okay, I'll tell him tonight. So I thought, since anyway I'm going to tell him, I'll just tell her that I already told him, because I was afraid that she'll feel bad if I tell her I forgot about it. I completely forgot about this incident. So I told her, yes, I told him about it. Then she said, oh, okay, so he's okay with me coming, right? You confirmed with him. I said, yeah, I confirmed, he's okay. I didn't really think that they were going to land up that night itself. I didn't know. I didn't kind of know what was in her mind, and I was too young to understand, the desperation that somebody feels when, their husband or the main breadwinner of the family is out of a job. I was too young to understand any of that. For me, it was just a conversation, and I missed telling, so thought I'll tell them now. So I went home. My dad was not home, and in the evening, I remember this incident and this scene so vividly. I was playing in my front yard with Kumar, actually my friend, and suddenly I see an auto rickshaw going by, and then I felt I saw my teacher in there. I saw that my Farida teacher in there. And I go, oh my God, I hope it's not her. And then I quickly try to go and hide inside. But by the time that auto rickshaw turns and it comes back up, and she goes, stop, 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 stop. She sees me. And then I was so nervous, because here's my teacher. My dad was still not home. My mom was home. My teacher with her husband. And I hadn't told anybody at home that she was going to show up. But I had told her that I told at home. So nobody at home knew that my teacher was going to show up. I didn't give a heads up to my dad at all. I was very, very nervous that I'll get into serious trouble for this, because I felt it is so embarrassing and awkward for everybody. For my teacher and her husband, for my parents, and for me too. It was just so awkward for everybody. So then my teacher came, and my mother was completely taken aback. So she's then my teacher said to my mother that we've come to meet your husband. My my husband needs a job, etc. And my mom said, well, my husband is not really home, so I don't know, when he'll come home, etc. Like, and then, but my teacher, I think, like she said, no, no, we'll wait because we've we've come a long way and we'll wait. And um, my mom said, like, maybe my husband won't. It'll be a while, so why don't you let the auto go? And then she said, yeah, we already let the auto go. Then they're just sitting there, and now I got so nervous because my dad was very nice and friendly and flamboyant and fun loving at home. But I had already been on that trip and I'd seen him working, and he was after work hours, he was fun loving and all, but he was a very serious, authoritative person at work. Sometimes he could be rude also. I've seen him like yelling at people and being rude to people who overstepped their boundaries. So I really didn't know how it would go for my teacher and her husband. And they were just sitting there waiting, and it was so awkward. So anyway, my dad came in. He was wearing a suit, and he had this brown briefcase with gold snaps in it. Before that, he had like a bag kind of thing, but later on he had a bag kind of thing. But before that, he had this brown suitcase thing, briefcase, not suitcase. Sorry, what am I saying? Briefcase. I don't know if those exist anymore. But anyways, he came in with it, and then my teacher and her husband like stood up, like, in attention almost. And then my dad was like, huh? Like, his face was immediately annoyed because he didn't know who these people were. And there was an annoyance. And whenever my dad got annoyed, like, his frown lines would go like this. Like, I have those frown lines too. Um, so, so he had a lot of frown lines and he was annoyed. And then I was so scared. I didn't want to come out. I just went and sat in the bedroom wondering what would happen. Then they talked for a long time. And then they called me out. And I really thought all of them would scold me or beat me or something. I was very, very nervous about, that whole, as long as they were having that conversation. I was wondering whether they were talking about me. And now, of course, they would compare notes and find out that I never told my father about her, or I was imagining all kinds of horrible things. So anyway, they called me out, and they were just finishing up, and I realized that actually my dad offered my teacher's husband a job as an accountant, as a junior accountant in his office, and he just created that job for him. Just overnight, and he said, okay, yeah, you can. He said, you can come in like Monday and you can start the job. Back then there was no HR, you just said show up and start it. And managers and senior people could make things happen. You just showed up and they'd create a position for you right then and there and do it. Not They had the ability to do it, not that they did it. Most people didn't do it. They had the ability to do it. So my dad was wrapping that conversation. So basically, he offered my teacher's husband a job, and my teacher's husband had been jobless for a while. Like she said, like it had been 6 to 8 months, or maybe even more than that. So then at the end of it, and I remember this, my dad said, so how are you going to go home? And my teacher felt awkward to say they couldn't afford to go back in the auto rickshaw, because they had so little money with her husband being, unemployed, and she didn't make very much money either. And she had a couple of children, and she had to take care of her in-laws. So they really wanted to make an impression, so they came in the auto rickshaw because they couldn't, not just that, they had to search for the address. So they couldn't do that like walking, right? So, but they really spent a large part of money and the money that they had that day on the auto rickshaw. So they're going to go back by bus. So they had to walk to the bus stop. So she felt uncomfortable saying that um, I'm going to like go back by bus. So she said, "Oh, I'll find an auto rickshaw somewhere close by." So, but somehow my dad picked up on the fact that they felt awkward about, that about saying they'll go back in a bus. I don't know how he picked up on it, but or maybe he was just being a super nice person. He said, "No, don't worry about it. Like, I'll drop you home." And then my teacher was like, "What?" And she's like, "No, you just came back home and we're so grateful you gave my husband a job. Like, you don't have to drop us home. It's we live quite far off, Then my dad was like, "No, no, no, I'll drop you home." And so I'll drop you home in my car. And he said, "Anu, like, why don't you join us?" So it was my father, me, my teacher, and her husband. So all of us were going to go back in the car. Now, as odd as this sounds, just to set some context, very, very few people when I was growing up had cars. Only like the wealthy had cars. Very few people had scooters or motorbikes. Very few people had a lot of people used to go around in buses. They didn't even have a bicycle actually. As odd as strange as this sounds, it was a different time. I think from the time I was 10 times India changed rapidly, but it was like that back then. So as they were approaching the car, my teacher and her husband did not know how to open the door. They absolutely did not know how to open the door. They did not know. So back in the day, the Ambassador and the Fiat cars, you wouldn't open them like that. Our Herald car, you would open like that, but there would be like a button-like thing, um, almost like a Tesla thing. You would press that button with all your might, and then you would open it like this. They didn't know how to do that. They were trying to pull at it, and they were feeling so awkward and so embarrassed. But my dad realized that they were struggling, and he didn't call that out at all. He was just such a gentleman. He opened the door for my teacher's husband. He said, "You sit next to me." And then he opened it he just sprinted down around the corner and opened it for my teacher. Because quickly he reached the door before she did, because my teacher's husband did not know. So he opened the door for him, and he opened the door for her. He made them sit down, and then he came and sat down. So that way my dad was, even though he was so commanding, he was so humble. Like, he was being so nice and so courteous to them. Then I sat in the back seat with my teacher, and they were just very, very thankful, very, very thankful. And she wouldn't stop thanking my dad. And then we drove them home, and we dropped them. But now on the drive back, my dad said, "Okay, come on over to the front," because I was in the back seat with my teacher. My teacher's husband was in the front seat with him. So I came over to the front, and sat with my dad next to him. And I was very afraid that, because I remember seeing his annoyed face as soon as he entered and he saw these people, and I did not know how he would have taken it. So I was a little scared. Not very scared, but I was a little scared that he might be still in an annoyed mood. It didn't seem like it, but I was worried about what he would say. So we pulled out of that street where my teacher lived and got onto the main road, heading on our way home. Then he said the very, very strange thing that I only understood many, many, many years later. I didn't understand it fully. I sort of understood, but not fully. So he just looked at me and he said, "Anuma, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be of help to somebody." Like, that was such an amazing thing I heard, that he actually considered himself fortunate to be in a position to be of help to somebody and that he could use that. So he actually said that. Um, so I was kind of taken aback because I thought he would be annoyed that I put this thing in his plate without a heads up. And then I said, oh, okay, yeah. I said, was he? And then I think he was just silent for a while, like a couple of minutes. And then he elaborated on that. And he said, see, I've never seen my dad without a job, but I think he had been unemployed for some time before I was born. Maybe he remembered that time. I don't know. I've always remembered my dad as supremely successful, always had a staff of people at his beck and call, had this car, and we had this, great lifestyle, very privileged lifestyle. We went on vacations, we wore nice clothes. So I wasn't born. So maybe he remembered that. I don't know what made him say this, but he said, it takes a lot of humility and helplessness for a person to ask for help from someone, from another person. One has to be in a very, humble, modest, and also in a helpless state to do that. And if somebody asks you for help in that state and you're in a position to help them, you should never say no. I don't ever say no, is what he said. So I didn't fully understand, comprehend the deep meaning behind what he said until many years later. But I did realize that my dad was an extremely helpful person. I mean, he could have easily told this person, I'll see what I can do, and not thought about it or worried about it. Like, I forgot about my teacher that very evening. But he actually made it happen, and he made them feel so comfortable. He didn't make them feel like small, or even though they were asking for help, and he did help them. He didn't make that very obvious. So I was very proud of my dad then. Anyways, we came home and I was very happy. And I got a lot of special attention from my teacher for the rest of the year, at least in the social studies subject. I became her favorite student. I was already everybody's favorite student, so I guess I was a first ranker, so everybody liked me. But I think I felt good that my family and my dad could be of help to my teacher. So, anyways, so again, what I learned from reflecting on these memories is that while it's wonderful to have like a fun life, privileged life where you have a car and you're going on vacations, you wear nice clothes, good food, you're doing home remodeling, you're doing all this. I think, especially if you're in that position, it's even more important to not miss opportunities to pay it forward, right? If you get an opportunity to pay it forward, to be of help, to be of use to somebody, it's nice if you extend yourself. You should extend yourself, is what I feel. At least that's how my dad was always. So anyway, with that I wrap up episode 8.6. Okay, and then next time when we meet, I think I'll wrap up this year. This year, we'll start with episode 9, and I had many significant life-changing events. Some not so nice ones. Actually, not any nice ones happened to me in that, but they nevertheless had a big impact in my life. So I'm going to discuss those. Okay, bye.